Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the episode of MCU Rewatch Review. Today I'm going to be rewatch reviewing Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther. So yeah, that does mean this is a dual episodes, episodes 14 and 15 combined. So yeah, I did watch Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther together. I wanted to make the video together because I wanted to kind of move this forward a little bit quicker because we're nearing the end of the Infinity Saga. Infinity War is the next movie, so expect that video fairly soon, just depending on how much content there is. Before we get into it, if you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, say to miss any time I upload a new video or go live. Both always need more time. And let's get into it. Starting it off, episode 14 of MCU Rewatch Review with Thor Ragnarok. I think this movie really didn't change much from the first time I watched it. Thing is, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, I've seen a lot of times, and so my opinion hasn't really changed after watching. This is probably my fifth time watching Thor Ragnarok and probably my third or fourth time watching Black Panther. I've seen these movies a lot because they're always on different streaming services and stuff like that. But I love Thor Ragnarok and I love Black Panther. But starting off with Thor Ragnarok, of course, I think this movie is one of the funniest MCU movies. Sometimes I do think the comedy is a bit over the top and it kind of ruins the movie sometimes. And the only time it ruins the movie is with Hela and stuff, because Hela is so menacing. I forgot how great of a villain she is, but she just really gets pushed to the side for comedic moments and stuff like that once in a while. So it does kind of hinder her character. But other than that, it really does work. The characters in this movie specifically, some of the best characterization in movies in the entirety of the MCU. Valkyrie, for example, as well as Jeff Goldblum's character, the Master Guy, and then obviously we have Loki, Bruce Banner, and Thor himself. Now, the biggest thing with this movie for me is just that it totally revamped Thor's character, and that's what I like so much about it. It really turned Thor's character from one honestly kind of mid character to something that I adore and is one of my favorite MCU characters ever. After Thor Ragnarok, Thor's character basically took a whole 180. It's a completely different character, and I really do like that. Obviously, Thor could be serious. I think that Endgame kind of portrayed it, but they played off too many other characters joking about his struggles, so it kind of took away from that whole aspect of Thor having a very serious storyline. But the funny storyline that we have in the moment of Thor Ragnarok is actually really good in my opinion. Now, one thing I will also say is with Thor and kind of him losing the hammer and stuff like that, I love the action that they do without the hammer. We've seen a lot of action specifically with the hammer, and I think it was really cool that they got rid of the hammer early in this movie and they made it to where it was just Thor using his thunder. Also, there weren't that many Thor fights, I guess, in this movie. There were maybe 3, 4. It wasn't as much small Thor fights. That's because he didn't have his hammer. He couldn't just use it whenever he wanted to. So I thought it was really, really cool the way that they played all of it out and the way that they used the action, and they kind of make it ship scenes and all that kind of stuff, and ship chases, interstellar chases throughout the galaxy, stuff like that. Those smaller sequences are really cool, and they don't depend just on Thor as much, but the whole team that's made up in this movie. Speaking about that, storyline wise, there's not too many side plots, I guess I would say, but there's a decent amount of side story for characterization. Like I said before, this movie has some great side characters. For one of the biggest examples is the way they introduce Valkyrie. Valkyrie is such a great character in this movie, in my opinion. I feel sometimes they kind of force the character in there too much when it should have been just moments between Bruce and Thor, just emotional Avenger to Avenger moments. But other than that, I think Valkyrie actually was really great in this movie, and I can't wait to see more of her in the future, especially in Thor Love and Thunder, to see how her character plays out. But yeah, guys, that's basically all I have to say for Thor Ragnarok. I've seen this movie a lot of times. I think it's great. But moving on to Black Panther MCU Rewatch Review. This part will be episode 15 technically, so it's crazy to think we're already episode 15, but nonetheless, we're here. Black Panther. I think this movie's cool. I don't think it's the best thing ever. I think it made some very good strides and leaps in terms of diversity and representation in the MCU, which I really do want to praise this movie for doing, because it did a really great job just representing different cultures and stuff like that. It doesn't feel like it's super forced in there and they're trying to shove down this new culture down your throat. It feels like it's naturally integrated, if that makes sense. So it feels really nice, and it kind of feels like a reset, because every single place, for example, Sokovia in the Avengers movies, or New York in the MCU in general, I feel like a lot of these places are just naturally there. There's no really big significance of it being there. It's a place, it's New York, it's a popular place, so we all care about the place. But this is Wakanda. It's a completely made up, fantastical place, and they make us really care about it through the culture, and that's what I find really, really interesting. Now, one of the biggest flaws of this movie, in my opinion, is the villain. I think Killmonger himself, on his own, is one of the best MCU villains, but in the movie itself, it's such a basic storyline, in my opinion, of just there's a king. King has a cousin, distant relative, whatever, like that should be having the throne, fight for the throne. King loses, the other guy takes over the throne, and they fight again. It's just a basic story. Villain wise, like it's just an evil Black Panther, which I don't really like. The only Marvel project where I'll say I like really like just the polar opposite villain is Ant-Man, and that's because the fighting styles actually felt different. You can tell from the final battle of Black Panther, it didn't feel like it was like two completely different beings fighting each other. Whereas, for example, like even WandaVision, the same thing happened. Like it just felt like two people throwing magic balls at each other. It wasn't that fun to me. And I didn't feel that way in Ant-Man because it felt like they were two completely different characters with just a same subset of powers. They just used them differently, which is why I think Ant-Man made it work. But Black Panther, again, didn't really make it work for me. But as a character, Killmonger is actually very interesting. He's not that deep now that I rewatched the movie and I think about it a little more, but he's still a very interesting and slightly compelling character. After rewatching Black Panther, I would still say, well, before I say this, if you guys haven't followed the channel for a while, my friend Brantley and I, who I host Third Thoughts, the podcast that we post weekly for, we had this debate. And basically, I think Wenwu is a way better villain than Killmonger, and he thinks Killmonger is like slightly better than Wenwu. I still stand by my statement after watching Black Panther. Still think Wenwu is a lot better than Killmonger, but I don't think Killmonger is bad by any means. I think this just rewatch really just reinforced it for me. Also, another flaw that I have with this movie, and this just goes in the story before, as I mentioned, it's just really predictable. It's just a basic plot line. But nevertheless, I want to talk about some of my favorite parts of this movie, and that is to be Black Panther / T'Challa's character. I think just number one, Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, but his performance in this movie was absolutely phenomenal. He is T'Challa, in my opinion. He would be the definitive version. I personally don't want them to recast. I understand people who want them to recast and keep that character of T'Challa alive and stuff like that. Nevertheless, I think that this character is perfect. The way that Chadwick Boseman just represents this character is just so great. And the character story itself, the character arc that we get in this movie of T'Challa finally understanding, and at the end of the movie, obviously creating the organization in California, I think it is. Like, obviously creating that organization itself isn't that big of a deal, but it shows somewhat of a story and character arc within T'Challa, which is why I find it so interesting and so compelling. Again, I think Killmonger is a great character, as mentioned before. I just think, like, as a villain itself, he's kind of lackluster in the big picture of things, but nonetheless, I think all the other side characters are also great. I think Shuri's also a great character. Don't necessarily like the actress, but that's besides the point. I still think she's really great. I think Okoye is also phenomenal. I cannot wait to see more of her in the future of the MCU. And just overall, like I mentioned in the beginning of this Black Panther segment, the culture in Black Panther is really what stands out to me, and just the way that they represent all of it is just super interesting. And that's my biggest pro about this movie, is that when I go into this movie, every single time I've rewatched it, I felt like I've been embedded into this world, and it's something I really don't get with many Marvel movies. And so that's definitely my favorite part about this one. But yeah, guys, that's basically it for this dual episode of MCU Rewatch. Again, this is episodes 14 and 15. Next episode will be Avengers Infinity War. It's crazy to think that we're already at Avengers Infinity War. We only have a few movies left in the Infinity Saga, and that's where I'm ending off this series. I'm not going to be watching any of the Phase 4 projects, so we'll be ending it off with Spider-Man Far From Home. Nevertheless, again, that's it for this episode of MCU Rewatch. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you next time. Peace.